Hello and welcome to our webinar Beyond the Basics, Expert Tips for a Successful Cybersecurity Career Today. Our guests, Dr. Paras Aurora from Microsoft and Somak Shomak from IBM. Before we get started, a few instructions on how to navigate WebEx. The question mark button will let you put in a question in the Q&A box. We will collect these and ask them of our panelists the Q&A section of the webinar toward the end. You can use the chat function to send a message to all panelists. Please do send it to all panelists so that we see it. And we're also going to have one interactive poll, and that will be right now. We're going to ask what is your current job role? And we're going to ask how you're feeling today. And we'll leave the poll open for just a minute or so. I'd like to get a feeling for who's in the audience, and we'd like to make sure that everybody's holding up well in this pandemic era with all the strange new stresses of life. It's nice to see that most people are saying they're feeling pretty good today. And we'll give the poll about 20 seconds more. Please get your answers in and hit submit. And 3, 2, 1. I'll share the poll results here. The greatest number of people here today are students. We do have managers and executives in the audience, also cybersecurity professionals. And as I said, most of you are feeling pretty good today, so I'm glad to hear that. And I will introduce our panelists. Dr. Paras Aurora is head of Azure Cloud Engineering at Microsoft. He's formerly a director of cybersecurity with PwC Consulting in India. Has an extensive knowledge of security standards and experience in virtually every aspect of security assessment and threat countermeasures. So we're lucky to have him, and we're lucky to have Somak Shoma from IBM India, who is setting up and running the security consulting services practice in India and South Asia for IBM as a senior managing consultant, an expert also in governance and compliance of information risk, cybersecurity, and data protection. And welcome to you both.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for inviting us. And good evening, first of all, for the people who are joining us from India. And good morning for the people joining us from the other part of the world as well. And good day for the people who probably would land in the afternoon or the mid-evening. We are lucky to have being hosted here on this particular session, and would take an opportunity to thank you all for joining this, first of all, and would love to share my experiences as well that I have gained over the years with you as well to make it more healthy discussions. Would like to have the question and answers going through as well. Over to you, Shamal.
Yeah, thank you, Paras. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking out your time and coming over this webinar, trying to understand if you can be of any help to you. So thank you to our host, gracious host, Simplilearn, for organizing this, and look forward to a fantastic evening of discussions today.
Thank you. So let's get started with a very general question, and I'll start with you, Paras, which is, how has cybersecurity evolved in the past few years, and why are companies paying more attention to it now than before?
So the way I look at this, Stuart, over the years, traditionally, if you really look at, we used to be have dealings or the conversations in person. We used to visit the marketplace, buy the stuff, and then come back. Over the years, the businesses have transformed their IT systems into the way they carry out the business, not only regionally, but across the globe. So the ecosystem for them, from a consumer perspective, have grown enormous and beyond the boundaries of a particular region or a geography. Not only that, it has also kind of, I would say, blasted beyond the boundaries when it comes to third parties that they interact with, the supplier, the dealership network. It's all connected now. And the moment you start picking up one thread, you start to realize that the thread is not local or is no more concentric to one particular event or one particular office. Rather, it's across. You can't leave people, you can't leave process, you can't leave technology, and now you can't leave the cloud as well or the virtual ecosystem that we live in. And over the period, if you really look at the way technology has expanded its footprint, it's mobile nowadays. So we have mobile applications, we have mobile devices. I mean, the technology is everywhere. The cars that we drive, even the thermostats that we have, it's all connected ecosystem. So a one breach of one particular area can really land up into a mess into other areas as well. And that is where it is now important for all of us to understand why the security is at the core of whatever we do and why it is so important for an individual as well, leave aside the organization, which is all the more important for them as well, to take care of their internal stakeholders, of their external stakeholders. And when it comes to the regulators, when it comes to the government, it is all about citizens and it is all about protecting the country's information, the citizens' personal information as well. So, I mean, you can't really think about anything without the security nowadays. It's it's like protecting your identity. It's like protecting what you want to do and how you do. So it has evolved and it will there to stay for long. And the threat actors are really becoming smart day by day. Like I talked about the automotive industry as well, we can look at the breaches that has started to happen and that we started to see on the automobile sector. It is all about the connected apps now, be it a CAN protocol, which is a proprietary protocol for auto segment. It's everywhere. So it is important that we stay relevant, we stay informed, and we keep ourselves aware on the cybersecurity breaches so that we can learn from it and grow more into the areas of the protection and the response as well.
Thank you, Paras. So this is how I look at it. I started my career in 2000 as a network security engineer, and at that point of time, my profile was more of engineer to take care of a Solaris firewall, checkpoint firewall running on Solaris at one of the public service companies of India, and the contract was with a system integrator in India. So it was more of a network security role that I had at that point of time. And my next job was another of network security. So what I feel is that the answer to the question is the more the ways of data transmission and movement have changed. Cybersecurity or information security have also changed accordingly. So remember the days when there was a floppy disk and we used to have this read write notch on the floppy disk. So that was data protection, right? I used to protect my data from being taken away. I used to protect the data from being written or prevent it from being written on top of it. So that was also one kind of protection, as you can see. So floppy disk is no more. Okay, pen drives are going away. So we used to have at one point of time many of our concerns used to be around the security of pen drives or USB drives. Okay. So as and when digitization and computerization has enhanced, changed, augmented, as and when various computing models have come up, as and when cloud has come up as more of a business come computing model almost, as and when third parties have come in more into the picture. So the threat vectors have changed, and as and when threat vectors have changed, that is why cybersecurity has become much more holistic, much more comprehensive in nature to include all the threat vectors into this picture. So previously, maybe it was only a part of it, like only IT security or computer security or only network security. Now, when you talk of security or information security overall, all the channels, the cloud, the IoT, the mobile employee, the borderless workforce, everything, everybody, everything is considered under the ambit of this. So that is how it is expanded with the expansion or with the discovery and invention of new and new computing models and working models of information system.
Okay. The two main, two threads that I picked out of your responses were the proliferation of applications and moving things out into a distributed world, and the proliferation of data itself and the increased volumes of data transactions. And both of those present more opportunities for cybersecurity threats and dangers. Um, so what are some of the new threat types that cybersecurity needs to defend against?
Could you please bring the mic closer? I think
Yes, I was going to say the
much
two
better.
threats that I picked from your responses were the proliferation of applications and distribution of devices, as well as the increasing sheer volume of data. And both of those are uh, opportunities for greater threats in cybersecurity. So what are the nature of some of the new threats that are emerging? And Somek, if you answer.
So, Paras, would you like to go first?
I can go for Shomak. So the way I look at from the trends that we are seeing from a breaches or from an issues perspective within the cyber area, I think with the pandemic coming into the play and more adoption of cloud happening, there are breaches which are increasing on the cloud instances. And when we talk about the storage buckets, the S3 buckets in the cloud, when we talk about the configuration, when we talk about a regulatory or a security needs beyond the perimeter or the boundaries, I mean, that's one area where we feel that the organizations would put more focus because that is what is being targeted as of now when we speak. Even if you look at the trends between 2019 and 2020, we see that most of the app-based services that got breached is because of a misconfigurations on their cloud instances on the S3 bucket. And leave aside that, from the perspective of the threats, we have started to see AI fuzzing happening into the environments, wherein it is now more automated way of detecting, exploiting, and then taking actions on the target to make sure that we accelerate the 0 days attack on the IT systems while we can obviously take an advantage of the AI fuzzing to respond to those breaches as well, but then the similar capabilities are along with the hackers as well. So we really need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves against the AI fuzzing attacks as well. The third and the most predominant, I would say, attack that we have seen over ages and rather over decades within the cyber or an IT industry are the social engineering attacks. And that is where, if we really refer to Verizon's data breach investigation report starting from 2015 until date, one of the areas or a threat vector which makes it to the report every year, and that is called phishing attack. And we have been hearing about this phishing attack for long. And like Shomak talked about his journey within the IT area and the security area, ever since that I have been into this domain for last 15, 16 years, I have been hearing about the phishing. But unfortunately, we have not been able to overcome this attack. One of the reports from the Verizon data breach investigation report still refers that it takes 6 seconds to click on a phishing attempt and user getting compromised and their IT systems as well, and the malware spreading across the organization. So it's just one click that it takes to infect the entire IT system in the organization. Other interesting trend that I have seen is on the deep fake theory, and that's one concept which is really taking up nowadays, and specifically with the elections coming up in different countries in different parts of the world. This is one agenda that I see from a cyber criminal perspective is it's picking up very well, and which basically translates to changing the face, manipulating the audio in a video clip, and then circulating it over a social platform. And that's for the spreading the false propaganda as well. So deepfake is picking up, and then ransomware attacks is what we have started to see from 2015 onwards, and they are real threats. They are here to live for long. We have looked into the WannaCry, we have looked into Petya, we have looked for the snake bites, we have looked at for no Petya and whatnot. I mean, the ransomwares are real threats. And the irony is that you don't really need a technical advancements or the technical knowledge to write those codes. You can really go onto the dark web, rent a hacker for you for as less as $500, and you can get a Facebook or a social platform ID hacked for you. You go onto the dark web, rent a hacker for a data breach that you want to target across an organization, share the details with them, share the bitcoins with them, and you will have your targeted attack carried out for you based on phishing, based on smishing, based on vishing attacks. All of these are very, very targeted. So I think from a trends perspective, we still see a lot of contributors from the earlier era, while we also see new contributing factors such as the ransomware, such as AI fuzzing, such as cloud security as top of the agendas as well for today's organization. What's your thought, Shomak, on this?
So, Parath, you're right. While you have fairly covered the entire journey of breach or the entire journey of attack vectors, and as you have shown that the attack vectors have become much more sophisticated in nature, much more advanced in nature, what remains constant, I think, is the human beings. The human beings always continue to remain at the weakest link, right? So, and phishing is a very much big evidence and proof of that. So, why is phishing still surviving? Phishing, I think, is one of the oldest surviving successful methods of hacking or compromise, and this is possible just because of humans being the weakest link. We remember the famous attack where a human being picked up a USB pen drive outside his office and then he plugged it into one of his network computers and then boom, bang, the virus spread all across the network. So it was a combination of, again, the human beings being the weakest link and the USB devices or USB ports not being secured adequately. And that is how the attack started. But if you see, as you see, I mean, USB ports are now secured, many things are secured. But as long as we human beings do not abide by basic cybersecurity hygiene, I mean, we'll always prove to be the weakest link in the entire transaction. Okay. So breaches are becoming more and more advanced. Attack vectors are becoming more and more advanced. More and more devices, more and more ecosystem is being used for the attack. But I think protection will come up. I mean, as and when cloud security is now a hot topic, the cloud, because of misconfiguration, insecure configuration, because of insecure posture, the cloud may be insecure. But definitely, we are having solutions to secure this cloud. But we human beings have to contribute to the success of the story by being protective ourselves. I think that is what I wanted to add to you, Bharat.
And I cannot agree more than anything on that, Shomak. And Stuart, if I can share my experience, one of the experiences that I have that I have faced while I was working with Verizon in India for their data breach investigation practice. I was leading that, and there was a breach that happened in Pune, India, and I flew to that place to contribute to the investigation. And during the investigation, we found that there was a $45 million heist that happened across the globe for that organization. It was a global payment processing organization, and they were under a targeted breach. During the investigation, we came out with more than 1,600 plus critical issues within the organization, and those 1,600 really, if you bifurcate that, observations or the gaps, those would relate to insecure configurations, people not looking at the monitoring engines. They had all the technologies that one can think of on this planet, and unfortunately, they did not have skills to look at that, and that kind of resonates back and gives me a food for thought on the same human skills that you talked about, Shoma. And not only that, the breach, if you really look at how it started because of a misconfiguration on one of the Tomcat instance, wherein the username and the password were configured default as Tomcat and Tomcat, and that's where the attackers were able to upload the malicious software, upload the keyloggers onto the target system, and they were able to scan the entire network because of the keylogger and the functionality which were available on that. So they upload the keylogger, they obtain the credentials, then they logged onto the system, they install the malwares, they scan the entire network, they got access to the administrators' desktops. From administrator desktops, it was like everything was raining from a credential standpoint. They had access to Oracle databases, they had access to the SFTP, they got access to whatnot information that we can think of. And unfortunately, this organization was into payments, so they were kind of invested heavily by the payment processors as well. So they were penalized by the RBI. They got investigated by the CERT India as well. The total amount that they kind of put into the penalties and the fines was to the tunes of 25 crores Indian rupee. And not only that, I have seen the CEO sitting in front of the RBI governor, holding hands and saying sorry and taking apology for not taking a due care on the incident and on the issues that has been raised by the team to the leadership earlier. So yeah, the threats are real, the impact are dreadful, and where it all starts is the configuration issues, the people not being aware on the basics. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Shamak, on that.
So cybersecurity is no more a threat that impacts only IT. So previously, IT used to be a rather a part or enabler of the business, but now businesses are IT itself. Previously, it used to be said that businesses run on IT, businesses are supported by IT. But now you have businesses which are IT itself, which are IT-centric business. Look at edtech, look at fintech, look at the look at the growth the fintech sector has seen. Okay, so fintech is totally an industry which is thriving on technology, right? It cannot run without technology. Here, technology is the mother of the business, mother of the solution. So when technology is such an important part of the business, you can't have an impact. You can't have. I mean, this impact of cybersecurity is definitely going to resonate across your entire business. And now more and more industries are being regulated by the regulators, market regulators like TRI, SEBI, RBI, whatever you have in India, whatever across the world. So regulations are becoming stronger because of the impact on share price, because of the impact on shareholders. Okay, so because of that, and this could lead to in turn to a lot of market scams. So that is why regulators are becoming stronger. So overall, that is why cybersecurity protection is becoming more and more important.
And more so, I think, Shamak, it's not about the information nowadays. It's about an individual life as well. So consider a breach which happens within a healthcare system, and you are being operated by a robot, and that robot is under a threat and under a breach. So, I mean, consider the impact that it can have on the individual life as well. So yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. You can't really think about an industry which is immune to it. And I mean, the threat is not only the information; it's beyond boundaries, beyond our imagination, and beyond anything else. Is what I can see.
I'd like to, yeah, amplify on that. There was a recent incident in Germany where a hospital's emergency room was hacked. It wasn't necessarily clinical procedures that were being hacked into, but the problem created uh, a closure of the emergency room. People actually had to stop getting treatment because of that attack. And the way you've described uh, the threats and the responses is very much in the language of warfare. I mean, you have um, propaganda operations, you have spying operations, you have an arms race. It's really, as you pointed out, since we live in an information world now, since many of the businesses and jobs we have are purely on the information platform, this is a super critical challenge for the world, for governments, for businesses, for individuals. What has COVID done to this? We're in the middle of an ongoing pandemic. We have countries that are experiencing second and third waves of infection, lockdowns being imposed, released, and then reimposed. And how has that changed both the way we interact with information systems, but also the cybersecurity threats?
So you're asking.
Shomek, if you would answer that.
So you're asking that what are the changes that COVID has brought about, right? That is the crux of the question.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So companies or organizations which are more digitally resilient, we have seen that they have been least impacted by the COVID. Okay. So in COVID or in post-COVID times, what we have seen is a lot of email compromises, which are again, as Parag was saying, they are based on phishing. The phished emails, compromised email, and they are using the very basic tendency or the weakness of human beings to fall in for weaknesses, right? So in COVID times, we have seen the people are definitely they are craving for more useful information, health topics, medical information, things like that. So definitely, phishing information has been on the rise. Phishing emails has been on the rise in post-COVID times. But companies which were always resilient, they have shown that they can fight with the situation much better than companies which have not been prepared like that. In COVID, or rather in post-COVID, employees have moved to the home, right? So they are all working from home. They are all logging from the outside their perimeter, company's perimeter. The company log into the company VPN. So internet exposed applications, they are taking the major load right now. Okay. So companies which had exposed most of the applications to adequate security now can cater to the increased demand. Companies which had now employees are always using digital collaboration tools like WebEx and all the Zoom and all of this stuff. The companies which are always already into the platform now they are saying that they can cope up with the situation better. But for an individual, I think for an employer, I think the change is not too much except that he's working from home, except that he's getting used to a different or a new kind of working atmosphere, okay, which he has never done before. But for companies, there has been a lot of change, and mainly in the work environment and how they cope up with the digital threats.
And just to add to that, Shomak, I think if you really look at today's incident or a couple of days before, if you really go, while we talk about the cyber, it always kind of revolve around the triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I mean, from a basic standpoint. And the way we look at the situation right now in Hyderabad in India, it's raining, it's flooding, and because of that, we have seen that the organizations are not able to support or operate their business. And for the simple reason that the ISPs are down, the people who are working from home, they do not have an electricity to really charge up their laptops or the mobile phone. I mean, it can get really worse. It can really turn the businesses out of shape. It can really impact the revenues as well. Now, this is just one instance from a work from home perspective. The other consideration, if you really look at, earlier when we used to work from offices, and I'm sure we all miss that, but earlier when we used to work from office facility, we used to have a secure network, we used to have a secure communication media, we used to have an access control passes to really enter into the facility and then operate from there. Today, when we work from our own kind of offices within our homes, we don't see that happening. We have our wireless configured within our home network with a range which is accessible to the people even in the other towers as well. So we see that a threat of wireless hacking or man in the middle as something which can really happen to anyone and everyone now. You talked about the simple email attacks, and that is absolutely the right example that you took, Shomak. I think that is something which is being targeted now in the wild as well. Other than that, if you really see, we have so many people accessing our home now. We can really party together while we are working from home, and we're really not sure of the attack that we can go under with our corporate assets sitting there and probably unlocked for some of the times. I mean, these are some basics that I have seen and I have been practicing to avoid the breaches at our home. The other threat, if you really get into a complexity, the other threat that we see from a work from home perspective is the data exfiltration. I mean, if you really do not have a VPN or a channel encryption and you are accessing your corporate resources over the internet, you do not have a visibility into the individual's network. Anybody can really tap in, create a shared drive onto their local network, can copy the data. I mean, that's all that they can do. You put up a proxy server at your home and you monitor all the credentials going out, and that could be it. You could have an entry point into the corporate environment as well. So, I mean, the work from home really have changed the way we need to really look at security, and not only from the technology standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. It has all the more become important to educate people, to gamify the learning. I mean, we have to break our barriers to come out of that simple presentation run mode to make sure that it becomes interesting for people to understand and to absorb those concepts really well so that they can rely those or kind of replay those examples in their real life and then see whether it kind of propagates to their children as well. I mean, so yeah, the work from home culture has really turned things upside down.
So exactly for us, one more learning or one more lesson for the companies is that there is nothing called a corporate asset anymore. So everything is a corporate asset. So
Correct.
wherever company's data is being transmitted, used, encrypted, decrypted, passed, stored, whatever the life cycle of the data be, that is in a corporate asset and requires an adequate and equal amount of protection just any other traditional corporate asset. So employees are not maybe may not be using their company laptop, they could be using their personal devices. They're in their personal Wi-Fi network, and if hackers can get into the network or through smart devices, maybe my refrigerator, my smart TV is also connected into my network, my home network, and if those bad guys get into the network and then get into my laptop, so bang, it's gone. So so endpoint computing, so computing security at the endpoint, at the brink, at the periphery has become even more important today with the work from home scenario. That is how I'll put it.
And so we've reviewed the current status of the cybersecurity environment, the threats. We talked about how COVID has changed how we work and therefore how many vulnerabilities we've opened up. Um, what does all of this mean for cybersecurity professionals? How are careers going to be changed, and what skills should people be looking to emphasize in the future?
I will take this question. Paras will do approval from you first. Previously, it was easier to give an answer to this question because cybersecurity was a much smaller field 7 years back, 10 years back. Now you have got so much of domains into cybersecurity. So it definitely, whenever someone comes up with a question, sir, I want to get into cybersecurity, I will ask, I will laugh it off and think that which domain of cybersecurity you want to get into. I know that's not a very right answer because the person who is asking may not have uh, the, the perception or the requisite amount of input necessary to make the decision at that point of time. But cybersecurity is huge right now. Okay, but I will always go by instinct. So I started my career as a FM, facility management engineer, and I knew nothing of cybersecurity. So I was fresh out of college, had read networking by Tannenbaum in computer science or in electronics and telecommunications. That was my closest shave with networking rather. And based on that knowledge, I was interviewed and became a facility management engineer at a public services company, and I was asked by my employer to take care of the firewall. So I mean, so nothing. So first of all, I did not know network security. I did not know IT security. Nothing at that point of time. But what I just followed instinct. I just did my job. So whatever I was asked to, I did it. Try to learn from, mug it up from internet, from various. At that point of time, there was not too much of internet. There was not too much of information, too much of available on the internet. So I remember I used to have the checkpoint. There was a checkpoint for about 4.1. That was the days of 4.1, and checkpoint used to have their huge this fat release notes. Okay, so this was as fat as this. So I used, that was the only book I had. That was my only reference I had at that point of time. So I just went by instinct, learned up what was told to me, what was given to me, and gradually my career progressed. So it started with network security for 2.5 years, then got a job in one of the big four where I started in professional services. So that is how my career took a turn. So then I saw that professional services is indeed a big part of security. So gradually, as and when I got opportunities, my cybersecurity career changed. So my advice to all is that don't try to uproot things. Whatever you get, learn it, use it, learn it more, and use it as a platform to move on to the next chair. Okay, you don't have to forcefully move into cloud. You don't have to forcefully move into IT. So whatever is there, everything has got a potential for you to learn and improve. So just use that platform, whatever you have. That is my basic. I can give more advice later on.
I agree, Shaumak, and I think the way I look at it is exactly the same. And when we started, I think our career, there was no concept of cybersecurity. There was a concept of IT, right?
IT.
And IT only, right? And I remember when I started, there was a boom in Java programming, and everybody was behind Java coding, creating programs, and whatnot. And eventually, that kind of made a shift towards IT configuration, then made a shift towards an IT security, and that's where firewalls, network security started to see their view into the age. And eventually, when it all grew, it became, and rather, it took a shape of information security, where there was an era of information sharing, there was an era of information collection. So it took a shape of information security from a compliance standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint. The regulators started to be more vigilant, more agile. And then we saw an era where everything started to kind of go back to the traditional IT security and become more deadly, I would say, or more dangerous. And that's where it took a shape of cyber security. Now, if you really see a cyber, that's a portion of information security, the way I see it, wherein it talks more in terms of a technology, in terms of configurations, in terms of the indicators of compromise, consuming the threats, threat indicators, doing a threat profiling, and whatnot. So I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, like Shomak said, uh, I mean, there is nothing that you can really predict in the cyber. Today we are talking about cloud. Probably tomorrow we are talking about some new other concept, right? So don't force yourself into one particular area is what my piece of advice is. But rather, my suggestion is to learn technology first of all, because until or unless you know what you are protecting, you would not be able to protect it. So understand the security from the perspective of protecting the IT. Now, for a very, very basic example, if we really need to protect a web server, we should first understand how a web server works. What are the different communication protocols which are available for a web communication? What are the different codes from a request and a response standpoint that a client and a server interacts with? So until unless we understand that nitty gritty of how web server works, we would not be able to do justice to the domain itself. What we will do rather is probably create a policy, create some superficial rules, and then believe in a myth that everything is secured because I have done my piece of job, which is not true a reality. So from that perspective, my belief, very strong belief rather, is to get your ground first of all covered on the technology. So if somebody wants to, let's say, take up a area of cloud security, I would say first go and get your hands dirty on the cloud. First of all, understanding how cloud interacts, how the cloud really works, and then you can really talk about the security. And same thing goes for application security, for instance, or a mobile security for that matter, or a network security for that matter. You really need to know the technology before you get your controls covered up for the threats that you're going to protect against. So that's how I see it.
Yeah,
Right,
that's an
Parth.
interesting. When I'm thinking, listening to that, I'm thinking of a race car driver, and a race car driver is not the same as a casual automobile user who is a user of the technology but doesn't necessarily understand how it works. The race car driver typically has mechanical background and understands everything that's going on in every system in that vehicle, so that as he's traveling at 180 miles an hour, he can tell what vibration means, what a particular sound tells him about the system. And understanding the internals gives him the ability of diagnosing any kinds of issues or problems that might come up that could take him off the road or kill him. So it's something similar here where we're talking, as you're describing, both being able to be generally adaptable in understanding technology, but also understanding the internals of the technology you're trying to protect. So that's very good advice. Somak, you're going to say something?
I didn't hear last what you said.
I asked if you were going to add more to what Prasad said.
Okay, yeah, definitely I can add something more. So these days we see a lot of people who are thinking of taking up a career in cybersecurity by just doing a course, okay, or maybe a certification. Okay. So I would say while that is one of the important things that you should do, certification definitely adds, but it adds on to knowledge and it adds on to experience. Okay. So with certification only, I don't think even go a long distance. Definitely, what counts first is knowledge, and then what counts next is experience. Certification is a complement of that. Certification is a testimony of that, right? So get you, as Farah said, get your hands dirty in whatever you get. Don't be choosy. My advice for every youngster would be, don't be choosy. Don't just go by the fad in the town that okay, cloud security is hot, IoT is hot, mobile is hot, okay, social is hot. So I'll go by that, and that will give me more jobs. The moment you are running for a job while trying to define cybersecurity career, you have changed your objectives. So don't let a job uh, define your career. Let what is required define your career. Jobs will automatically fall in place. So as Farah said, learn technology first, learn operating system first, learn devices first, and accordingly, the complete picture of cybersecurity, all the missing pictures will gradually come together and give you a complete picture. Then it can be cloud today, it can be something else tomorrow, it can be rain tomorrow, it can be whatever. All of these things will gradually fall in place, and you can take it up. So uh, one more important thing is that staying relevant. Cybersecurity is so changing. I mean, the technologies are so changing. So how do you remain relevant over a career spanning 20 years, 25 years, 30 years? That is also important. That's also a challenge. Okay, you cannot go out of relevance. So a technology should not define your relevance. A particular technology should not define who you are. That I am good at this, and the moment the technology is gone, do I lose my job? No. If you have the basics right, if you have the knowledge right, if you can see the whole picture properly at the same time, then I think you still remain relevant for ages to come, and as long as you have your career. I think that's how I just wanted to put that across to the crowd over here.
Excellent. And so I believe that I know how you're going to answer this, but in both of your cases, you look for people to join your teams and evaluate them and hire them. And what types of people are you looking for in terms of their aptitude, their interests, and their backgrounds um, to join your cybersecurity efforts?
For me, it's attitude, attitude, attitude. Okay, so knowledge I mean, this guy may be knowledgeable tomorrow on something, a new technology, he may not have the necessary knowledge. So, knowledge is not very important today. It's important, but knowledge can be acquired. So, you are not born with the knowledge. You have to acquire knowledge. So, whatever knowledge that you're working on is not something that we are born with. Okay, we have all acquired this knowledge over time. And so, as and when you time, I believe if you have the attitude, you'll acquire the knowledge. So what is more important is attitude, the attitude to learn, the attitude to remain humble. okay, and the attitude to fight it out, irrespective of all the odds. So you might see often that someone is getting more money in certain part of in a different career. Okay, he's getting a different, maybe a flasher job or something like that. That should not demotivate you. Okay, you remain focused on knowledge, and you remain focused, and your attitude will drive you to get more knowledge, and as and when the right job will fall on your lap, something like that. Paras, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree with you, Shaumak, and I think when we talk about attitude, it's all about being proactive. You talked about being relevant. It's always about never lose hope. And the moment I see anybody joining my team, I basically look at obviously the attitude is one, but then I also look at some of the complementing areas, and that is something which many people really doesn't focus upon, unfortunately. And that is awareness on the latest trends, on what is happening within the technology. And if you are appearing for an interview, let's say for an organization, for a profile, what awareness you have for that particular role. So I think that clarity of a role is very important when it comes to a job interview or landing into a job, because that will decide how your future really shapes up. That is one. Second area where I see people really faltering upon is is honestly taking their job seriously, and they probably would be not very well prepared. And when I say prepared, it's not technical preparation, but rather from a soft skills preparation perspective. They would appear so casual in an interview that it doesn't really define their seriousness. It can be an bias as well in me. Please forgive me for that. But the way I see is, if you really don't worship your job, if you are really not up for what you're preparing for, you would really not honor that. And when I say soft skills, it's very basic to really comb up your hairs, be presentful, and then be available for the time slot that you have been slotted for. So if you're not on time, I mean, that's one of the turn downs for me. So, I mean, these are some of the areas that I would look for. And absolutely, attitude without goals is paramount, and that is very, very important for parameter for me as well. And then knowledge and skills will follow automatically with an attitude. So I totally concur with you, Shamak, on that point. So yeah, these are some additions that I would look out for the people who are really interested in joining the teams.
All right, this is it's been a great discussion. I'd like to move on to some of the questions from the audience. First off, can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And we've got several questions about people who want to move from network engineering or from service delivery management into cybersecurity. What advice would you give somebody trying to make that type of a career shift?
Paras, do you want to take this
Shoma,
question?
yeah.
Okay,
I
fine.
can,
Paras,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
can,
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
can take that question, Shamak.
Okay.
So the way that I look at from a transition perspective, I can share my journey where I started from a help desk, IT help desk as my first job, and then transitioning into a core IT from a server management perspective, and then into the security. And there was a very funny reason that I landed up into a security is that I saw one lady being really pampered upon in an organization when she stepped in, and she was an auditor. I was a support engineering guy, and I said this is something that I want to be, and that's where I kind of focused, and then I landed up in as well. Now, from an IT services, if somebody wants to make a transition into security, I think that's I still see that as very, very relevant, because the individual would already have an experience, a view onto an IT landscape. That is one. Second, the individual would also have been exposed to the IT servicing, wherein they would be interacting with the customers, they would be interacting with their internal stakeholders as well. The third point is, from a transition perspective, is it's never too late. And when you are into an IT services kind of an organization or a profile, you are already talking a language of a technology. And once you are aware of a technology, like I said earlier, it's easier to protect it. And and you just have to really tune your thoughts to think it otherwise, to think what can go wrong and how it can happen. Now that's from a personal tuning perspective and personal thoughts perspective. When it comes to a job, it is important that first of all, you should have some experience on the security front if you really want to table your profile to a job interview. If that is not a case, then you should really have a substitute in terms of the certifications or the trainings that you have taken or the courses that you have attended from a cybersecurity standpoint, because that adds to a proactiveness, like I talked about, that you are proactive in upskilling yourself and making sure that you are relevant to the industry. So either you should have an experience or you should have a willingness to learn and you should have done some courses, certifications, attended universities in that area before you land your resume for a job. And then it is all about your confidence. It is all about how you convince the interviewer on the other side. People today, I can tell you, within the organizations are okay to accept the transitions as well. I have seen that happening in PwC. I can see that happening in Microsoft as well, for that matter. People are okay to consider a transition candidate till the time the person is really showing that keen interest into the domain and they have proven their knowledge in a discussion. So it's all about how you take it, and industry is really accepting it. I don't see any issues in that.
I'll just add on to what Parag said. Mahesh, I guess this question is from you, so I'll read out what you said. I am a IT service delivery manager managing operations. How to transition to security as it has become paramount for operations. What to start with and what to be relevant. Okay. I'll give you one or two pointers. Since you're into IT operations, you must be working on an ITSM tool, right? Nowadays, we have these tools which are combined with GRC. ITSM tool come GRC combined. So there is a marriage of ITSM and GRC because GRC tool, as you know, what does it do? It takes incidents from you, it takes incidents from you, it takes audit reports from you, it takes observation findings from you, creates a risk, and then tries to create a workflow based on which you can have visibility on the life cycle of the risk till it is addressed, mitigated, whatever. Okay. So most of these come from IT service requests or maybe IT incidents, right? So that is where the marriage of IT SM tool and GRC tools have happened. And there are quite some tools commercially available in the market. I will not name them, which have a single interface for both, right? And that maybe that's also a reason why they're selling more than some other tool. So that is something which you can look at because that will also give you a hands-on experience on managing a GRC tool also if you do that. I'm being a little more specific. As part of IT service delivery, you could also possibly be looking at IT incidents, and a part of that could be IT security incidents. I'm not sure how it works in your organization, but you could be working IT security incidents. So try to understand how the IT security incidents or events are being addressed. So there's a whole chapter in IT security on IT security incident management. Then IT security incident is the disruption, okay, of a business as usual situation due to security reasons or whatever, okay, because of one of the three, CIA being not present, okay, one or more. Try to understand how that incident is being addressed. So instead of being just a manager looking at the MIS and looking at closure of incidents, try to be more specific and detailed and hands-on into IT security incidents. Maybe you'll find a lot of threats which will be coming in, a lot of threats which are resulting in an attack, which are coming up with incidents in terms of symptom. I mean, the incident first comes to you in the form of a symptom, and that is how the investigation leads to the discovery of a threat or an attack in the company. So you could also focus on there. So I just wanted to add these 2 points to Bharat's.
Excellent. We have a number of freshers in the audience, and I have one interesting question here from Lakshmi, which is specific to the Indian market, which is, how are state governmental and non-governmental colleges equally valuable in studying technology and cybersecurity? She asked if somebody needs to move into an urban area to take this training, or are more provincial colleges capable of giving that kind of education? Tomek, I see you're thinking about that answer.
That's a little typical. That's a little weird question to answer. Uh, which is better? I think that's the question: the state government institutions or the private institutions, right? So I am not exactly sure which should be better, but most of the institutions, they draw the inspiration, or their courses are defined in collaboration with mostly large universities, okay, who have famous I mean who have pioneered the cause of cybersecurity. So if that's a common source, so I don't think there could be too much of a difference. Maybe the economics will change, maybe the mode of execution will change, okay, but I think the private university or the private college or the private institution vis-a-vis the government one does not matter too much. As long as you have the required knowledge along with attitude, I think you can sail through. So to answer your question, I really don't want to go into comparison, but I think both are equally good. But what will sail you through, what will take you through is you. I mean, that is you, right? What you are, what you are made of. So whatever be the knowledge that is coming from any of these courses, whatever you add on top of it is what you are. That is how I'll put it.
Yeah, and just as a principle of guidance on selecting uh, probably either of it, I would say try to verify what kind of a lab facility they offer. What timings do they offer? Whether you are allowed to access a lab after a particular point in time or not, so that once your class gets over, you are allowed to enter the lab and practice yourself out in the lab. So that is one important thing. The second thing is look at the course curriculum as an outline and see whether it relates to your thoughts as well. I mean, don't really push yourself into a course which you really don't understand. So first of all, it is important to understand the course outline, and if you believe that that is something which is going to help you, I would say go for it. The third thing that I see is look at the course outline, try to map that out with certifications which are available in the industry as well, and see if after completing the course, would it enable you to take up specific certifications so that you don't end up spending a lot of money on the certification learning cost as well. So I would say look at for these three aspects, and if you believe that all the three areas are okay, it really doesn't matter, like Shomak said, whether it's a government base or a private player. It's really about getting your hands dirty and how much time you really spend on learning the new areas of the knowledge.
Faraz,
Right.
I'd also like to ask a question related to what you had said about knowing the technology. Is there a particular priority that somebody should look at for which technology to know? Should it be web servers versus cloud versus some other aspect? What, where would you recommend people to start, or is there any preference?
So I honestly do not have any preference on that, but there are multiple areas that one can really evangelize and get their career developed into. For instance, we can really learn the operating system from a Windows standpoint and become either an ethical hacker on the operating system platform, or we can also look at growing ourselves into a cyber forensics for Microsoft Windows platform. Same thing, we can go for a Linux administration or understanding Linux course, and then growing ourselves into the field of ethical hackers, bug bounties, or even the forensic side. On the application side, if I'm a developer, if I learn one language out of many, I know the concepts of application development, and later on I can see myself growing into an application security area. If I am good at really compliance side of it, I can look out myself for growing into an area of a risk management or a risk assessment. So, I mean, there are multiple areas. So, if we are working on a network side, I can grow myself into a threat hunting. I can grow myself into security operations center and so on. So, it totally depends on what area you are currently working upon, what excites you, and you will have your career in the cybersecurity because it cut across each and every technology that we touch today.
Yeah, so this goes back to what I said earlier. Don't try to change what you are doing. Okay, be where you are. If you're into network security, if you're into OS administration, if you're into device management, if you're into something else, okay, continue to do what you are. You'll always find that uh, security can be added components on top of that. So learn security in your field, and gradually things will fall in place. So you don't have to forcefully change just because you think that the career is better over there, but yes, some things are doing good because companies are moving to a borderless environment where local data centers or physical IT infrastructure is becoming more and more less relevant. Okay, so that is why you see more happening, more hot these days. Okay, and cloud is going to stay and stay for long. Okay, so you gradually see the decadence of the typical traditional EDP or the data center. Companies will not invest more into IT infrastructure physically in place and all the stuff. Okay, so computing, storage, everything, networking, everything moves to the cloud. Okay, so that's why cloud is going to be the technology of the future. So you can definitely uh, look at the cloud as a possible career option. But when you're working in the cloud, everything remains same. Cloud is at the end of the day a large data center, right? So when you move to the cloud, when you go as an engineer, when you become an engineer with a cloud service provider, you're basically working in a large data center, much larger, much more resilient, much more geographically spread data center. So at the end of the day, it's a data center, okay, wherever it is, or wherever it's scattered, or whatever it is. So the basic technology still hold good, whatever you have learned. So remain where you are and try to learn over there.
Excellent. I have one last question again from Mahesh, which uh, I think is an interesting question because it deals with a buzzword that we keep hearing. Uh, DevOps, which is an important aspect of cloud software development deployment, but how does that relate to cybersecurity and cybersecOps and that type of thing? Do you see those as uh, real areas of interest, or right now buzzwords that describe other real work?
I think Paras can go for this. I mean,
Uh,
I think he's the right
I
one
can
for it.
I can take that question as well. So, from a DevOps standpoint, the way I look at, so consider an environment. I'll take an example. I am, let's say, following a waterfall model within the software development. I first of all go to all the business teams, all the stakeholders, BAs, and I will start collecting the requirements. Now, in the middle of a project, let's assume the technology has changed or the business requirements have changed. I have already developed a piece of code which is not yet tested. And I have to really circle back, go back to the initial phase again, and then start to collect the requirements again from the security standpoint, from the technology standpoint, from the business standpoint. And I will keep doing that till the time my final output is ready. Now, this is still easy to manage. Look at a different situation where I have got my code almost ready. It is not. It is ready for the deployment, and the security team comes and says, "Hey, what? This is something which cannot go live because it has so many bugs in this, and these are the security flaws. You can't really launch the product with this. So you will have to repeat the cycle again because you missed taking the inputs from the security team initially, or the regulations have changed in the midway, and you are forced to take those decisions again. Now, that is where I see a DevOps partnering it with the security and driving it all together. In today's environment, you don't really code in a waterfall model. You rather go agile. And that is where you keep on involving the stakeholders at different phases, making sure that they are being heard, their requirements are being listened to, and are being accommodated within the code that you are developing. At any point in time that you see that the requirements have changed, you have a flexibility to really fix that issue in a real time. Now, that's on a project management standpoint from an agility perspective. From a security standpoint, you have your agile team ready who is really taking up the challenges of doing a code testing in a real time. You can either automate that, you can have your teams on a standby to do that testing for you within a defined period of time so that you can budget that within your code changes. And the moment you have a code ready, you already have your stakeholders involved. So your security teams are aware that this is something which is happening. This is a language, this is a platform. These are the lines of codes which are being written, and the code is made available to the security teams beforehand for the testing, and you don't really land up in the surprises at the end where you are into an unaware kind of a zone from a security bugs perspective. So I see that secure DevOps is it's a real concept. It is really helping many organizations as we speak today. There are various tools available wherein the developer doesn't have to go to a security team altogether. You just have to, as a developer, you just have to submit a code into an application, and the application run itself provides you, as a developer, a view in terms of the security weaknesses from an automated scanning perspective. You, as a developer, go back and fix those issues before you share that code with the security team. So you cut down on your maintenance costs, you cut down on your operation cycle, you cut down on the surprises, and obviously you cut down on the threat surface from a production code perspective. And then the security teams are really tasked to give a final view on the security from a penetration testing, black box, gray box, or a white box, to present you a view from a business stakeholder whether the application is secure and bug free from a security issues or not. So you really kind of integrate your process from a security team, and you get the output that you are intending without any surprises at the end. So yeah, secure DevOps is a good concept, and it is here to stay as well.
And the primary reason behind everything has been the agility of the business. The business needs to be more agile. Yes, from their in their expectations from the IT department for the computer application, other digital applications that they want from the department. And since they can't afford so much of time, so these guys have to make applications in a jiffy, and that is where all DevOps, tech DevOps come. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. This has been a really wonderful discussion, and I hope that our audience has found it valuable as well. And I want to thank both Paras and Shomak. They have LinkedIn links. You can find them there if you would like to connect with them. And we have so many more questions than we could possibly fit into the time allotted, so we will be doing some follow-up articles on the subject. I would also like to thank our partner Freshers World for promoting the webinar, and Freshers World is a #1 job portal for freshers in India. So we really thank them for being a partner with us today. I do want to mention our next upcoming webinar in the topic of ITIL and how ITIL combines with digital transformation and helps it provide greater value to businesses. It's another interesting career field, and our expert speaker will be Akshay Anand, who's a product evangelist for Axelos. That will be next Wednesday, 1 week from tonight. And I want to thank everybody, invite you all to connect with us on our Simplilearn social channels, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. This is the conclusion of our webinar. So again, thank you to our panelists and thank you to our audience. And we look forward to seeing you at future webinars.
Thank you, Simplilearn. Thank you, the audience we had. I mean, it was great having you all here and look forward to more such engagements in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe and stay secure as well.
Yeah, stay
Take
safe.
care.
Right, stay safe. Yeah, stay safe. Thank you.
Bye now.